Hi friends, this is Sujata Eliguri from Vivekananda Nursing Academy. Today I am going to talk about cardiovascular system. So in cardiovascular system, cardio means heart, vessels means blood vessels. Okay, in blood vessels we have three types: arteries, veins and capillaries. So arteries carries oxygenated blood and arteries carries the blood away from the heart. Veins bring the blood to the heart. Veins bring deoxygenated blood to the heart. Okay, heart is hollow muscular pumping organ. So capillaries are the connections between arteries and veins. So capillaries are smallest arterioles and they connect between artery and vein. Okay, so let us see in detail how the heart is going to pump the blood and how it is receiving the blood and how it is pumping the blood to the parts of the body. Let us see in detail. Heart is a hollow muscular pumping organ. Heart is hollow muscular pumping organ. Main function of the heart is pumping. Okay. So, it is a hollow muscular pumping organ. It receives the blood from veins and it pumps the blood from the arteries. The arteries will carry away the blood from the heart to body parts. So, size of the heart. So, size of the heart will be like individual's own fist. And heart is situated in the thoracic cavity. Heart is situated in the thoracic cavity between the lungs. So, where is the heart? Heart is situated in the thoracic cavity between the lungs within the mediastinum and towards the left. So, towards the left you can see. So, between the lungs within the mediastinum towards the left, and heart has base and apex. So this we can call it as apex. This is the apex of the heart and this is the base of the heart. So this is the diaphragm which separates thoracic cavity and abdominal cavity. So heart is situated in the thoracic cavity slightly to the left side of the thoracic cavity on the diaphragm. It is situated on the diaphragm between second and fifth rib. Between second and fifth rib, heart is located or situated between second and fifth rib. So heart is like cone shaped organ. Heart is cone shaped organ. This is the base and this is the apex. Heart pumps the blood in two circuits, like pulmonary circuit or pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. So pulmonary circulation ante, so heart nunchi manaku blood ఏ విధంగా lungs కి చేరుతుంది and from the lungs how it is comes back to the heart. Okay, so దాన్ని మనం pulmonary circulation అంటాం. Pulmonary circulation means how the blood is pumping to the lungs. Okay, so from the right ventricle, from the right ventricle through pulmonary artery, deoxygenated blood will pumped into the lungs. Okay, so pulmonary artery will carry away the blood to the lungs. Okay, so pulmonary artery carries the deoxygenated blood to the lungs. Okay, so within the lungs exchange of gases will take place. So pulmonary veins will bring back oxygenated blood into the left atrium. So from the left atrium the blood will enters into left ventricle. So pulmonary circulation means the blood, deoxygenated blood which is ejecting from the right ventricle to the lungs and from the pulmonary veins, how it is getting back to the left atrium. So this is called pulmonary circulation. The blood is pumping to the lungs and from the lungs to the heart, how the blood is coming back. So that is called pulmonary circulation. So next is systemic circuit. So in systemic circulation, how the parts of the body is getting supplied. Okay, so how the heart is pumping to all the parts of the body or rest of the body is called systemic circulation. Systemic circulation. So in circulation we have pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. So kinds of blood vessels. As I said, we have three types of blood vessels: arteries, veins and capillaries. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. Arteries carry blood away from the heart and carry it to the capillaries. Okay. So arteries carries always oxygenated blood. Arteries carries always oxygenated blood. Okay. So capillaries. So capillaries are smallest arterioles or microscopic vessels. Capillaries are smallest arterioles or microscopic vessels when exchange between cells and blood takes place. Okay. So exchange here where exchange between cells and blood will takes place within the capillaries. Veins. So veins receive blood from capillaries and carry back to the heart. Okay. So arteries carry blood away from the heart and carry it to the capillaries. Veins will collect the blood from the capillaries and they carry it back to the heart. For example, so these are the arteries. Okay. So in between we have the capillaries and we have the veins. Okay. So arteries will carry the oxygenated blood and supply to the capillaries. So in the capillaries where exchange of gases will take place within the tissues. Okay. So this is called internal respiration. Usually the exchange between the tissues and capillaries. The exchange of gases which takes place between the tissues and the blood. Okay. That is called internal respiration. Okay. So from the capillaries this deoxygenated blood, okay, will enter into the veins. Okay. So these are the arteries. Capillaries are connections between arteries and veins. Two sets of pumping chambers in the heart. Okay. Two sets of pumping chambers, like two sets means, so right side is completely deoxygenated blood. So right side is completely deoxygenated blood and left side is oxygenated blood. Okay. So right atrium receives systemic blood. So right atrium receives systemic blood which is deoxygenated. Okay. So right ventricle will pump the blood to the lungs. Okay. Next, left atrium will receive oxygenated blood from pulmonary veins. Through pulmonary veins, left atrium will receive the oxygenated blood. Okay. Left ventricle will pump the blood into the aorta. Left ventricle will pump the blood into the aorta. So overview of the cardiovascular system, if we see systemic circulation and pulmonary circulation. So if you see pulmonary circulation, so first initially we'll get, this is the right atrium. This is the right atrium. So this is right atrium, right ventricle. Left atrium, left ventricle. Okay. Right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle. So from all the parts of our body, all deoxygenated blood enters into right atrium from or through superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. So మన బాడీలో ఉన్న ఏదైతే deoxygenated blood ఉందో from the capillaries it enter into the veins. So through veins, all the veins in the lower body or inferior body will drain into inferior vena cava. Okay. All deoxygenated blood. So all deoxygenated blood from lower parts of the body will be drained into inferior vena cava. From the superior parts of the body, all deoxygenated blood enters into superior vena cava. Okay. Superior vena cava and inferior vena cava will bring deoxygenated blood into the right atrium. Okay. Superior vena cava, inferior vena cava will bring deoxygenated blood and drain into right atrium. Okay. From right atrium, this deoxygenated blood enters into right ventricle through atrioventricular valve. Okay. So from here, through pulmonary artery, usually all arteries carries oxygenated blood. Usually all arteries carries oxygenated blood. But here pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. Pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. Okay, so pulmonary artery will carry deoxygenated blood and it will bifurcate. Okay, it will bifurcate and it will take the blood into the lungs. So this is deoxygenated blood pumped into the lungs. Okay, so within the lungs, exchange of gases will take place. That is called external respiration. Within the lungs, what happens? Exchange of gases by the process of respiration, inspiration and expiration, and by external respiration. By external respiration, exchange of gases will take place within the lungs. Okay, so after that, after exchange of gases, oxygenated blood will come back to the heart. Okay, deoxygenated blood pumped into the lungs, and from the lungs oxygenated blood will come back to the heart by pulmonary veins. Okay, through pulmonary veins. Okay, so pulmonary arteries carries deoxygenated blood, pulmonary veins carries oxygenated blood. So usually all veins carries deoxygenated blood except pulmonary vein. Okay, so pulmonary veins will bring oxygenated blood. Okay, so pulmonary veins will bring oxygenated blood to the left atrium. Okay, so this is called pulmonary circulation. So deoxygenated blood from the pulmonary artery, it enters into the lungs, and from the lungs through pulmonary veins, it comes back again to the left atrium. This is called pulmonary circulation. So coming to the systemic circulation. So once the blood, oxygenated blood enter into the left atrium, okay, in systemic circulation, once the blood is entered into the left atrium, this will be pumped into the left ventricle by bicuspid valve or by the mitral valve. Okay, so after that, after ventricle receiving the oxygenated blood, ఎప్పుడైతే మనకి oxygenated blood అనేది ventricles లోకి వచ్చిందో, from here through aorta, it will be pumped out to the all the parts of the body. So aorta will give branches, many branches to give supply to the total part of the body. So aorta అనేది మనకి కంప్లీట్ గా బాడీ పార్ట్స్ కి బ్లడ్ ని సప్లై చేస్తుంది. ఓకే, సో aorta is arised from the left ventricle. Okay, pulmonary artery arises from right ventricle. Okay, aorta arises from the left ventricle. So how the aorta pumps the blood to the parts of the body is called systemic circulation. So how the blood is going from the heart to lungs and how it is getting back to the heart is called pulmonary circulation. So heart has 4 chambers. Heart has 4 chambers. What are they? Right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. Okay, heart has 4 chambers like, okay, so right atrium, right ventricle and left ventricle. Okay, so heart is surrounded by membrane called pericardium. So covering layer of the heart is called pericardium. So pericardium is fibroserous sac. Pericardium is fibroserous sac, means fibrous layer plus serous layer. Okay, so pericardium is made up of fibroserous sac, fibrous layer and serous layer. The heart and the roots of the great vessels. The pericardium is fibroserous sac that encloses the heart and the roots of the great vessels. The pericardium lies within the middle mediastinum. So you can see this is the pericardium. So pericardium, main function of the pericardium is to restrict excessive movement. Okay, so it restricts excessive movement of the heart as a whole and to serve as a lubricated container in which the different parts of the heart can contract. Okay, so the pericardium will restrict excessive movement of the heart as it is having it is a serous membrane. It contains like lubricated container. Okay, so pericardium like pericardium is made up of fibroserous sac. Okay, so superficial fibrous pericardium. Pericardium can be divided into superficial fibrous pericardium. Okay, and deep two-layer serous pericardium. Deep two-layer serous pericardium. So the covering layers of the heart, if we see, we have three layers like pericardium, myocardium, which is made up of muscles. Pericardium is made up of fibroserous sac. This is fibroserous sac. And myocardium, endocardium. So endocardium is the innermost layer. Endocardium is the innermost layer. Myocardium is made up of muscle tissue, which helps in the contraction of the heart. Okay. So in these three layers, first one, superficial one is pericardium. In this again the pericardium is divided into like two layers. Superficial fibrous pericardium and deep two-layer serous pericardium. Deep two-layer serous pericardium. So in deep two-layer serous pericardium, so parietal and visceral. So serous layer means it should have two layers. Serous layers means it should have two layers. అయితే మనకి సీరస్ లేయర్ అనేది నాట్ ఓన్లీ ఇన్ ద హార్ట్, మనకి ఇంకా అదర్ ఆర్గాన్స్లో కూడా కనిపిస్తుంది లైక్ లంగ్స్. సీరస్ మెంబ్రెయిన్ మనం లంగ్స్లో కూడా చూడొచ్చు. సో లంగ్స్లో సీరస్ మెంబ్రెయిన్ ఏమంటాం, లంగ్స్ని కవర్ చేసే సీరాని we will call it as pleura. Okay, serous membrane which covers the lungs is called pleura. And abdomen. So abdomen ni cover chese serous membrane ni manam peritoneum anochu. We will call it as peritoneum. So peritoneum is the largest serous membrane in our body. Peritoneum anedi largest serous membrane in our body. Okay, so now pericardium is fibroserous sac. Serous sac means it should have two layers. What are they? Parietal and visceral. Parietal and visceral. Okay, so in pericardium, outer or superficial fibrous pericardium which is made up of fibrous. Okay, so this is fibrous layer. After that we have serous. Okay, so in serous this is parietal. So after that pericardial cavity and visceral. Okay, so this is serous membrane. Okay, serous membrane means it should have two layers and between these two layers some amount of fluid. Okay, this is called pericardial fluid. This is parietal and this is visceral. Parietal pericardium, visceral pericardium. In between these two layers we have some amount of fluid. So ee fluid ni manam pericardial fluid ani anachu. Okay, this is fibrous layer. So this is serous layer, fibroserous layer. So outer or superficial fibrous layer which is made up of fibrous. So serous layer is made up of parietal and visceral. In between these two layers there is some amount of fluid. So that fluid is called as pericardial fluid. So after this layer we have myocardium. After this we have myocardium and endocardium. So these are the complete covering layers of the heart. So we can call visceral layer of the heart is called epicardium. So you can see this is fibrous layer, superficial fibrous pericardium. Okay, deep serous membrane. In this serous, this is parietal, this is visceral. In between these two layers pericardial cavity, here we have pericardial fluid. Okay, so visceral layer also called as epicardium. Visceral layer of the serous pericardium is called as epicardium. And this is the myocardium which is having bulk of the mass or muscle mass. Okay, so this is myocardium is comprising of muscle tissue, cardiac muscle tissue. Okay, this is endocardium, which is innermost layer of the heart. Okay, so inside this we have chambers of the heart. Okay, this is about the pericardium. Next, blood supply to the pericardium. So blood supply manaki pericardium ki ఏ విధంగా వస్తుంది అంటే mainly by pericardiacophrenic branches. Mainly pericardium will supplied by the pericardiacophrenic branches from internal thoracic arteries. Okay, nerve supply is by phrenic nerve. Nerve supply by the phrenic nerve. So pericardium nerve supply by the fibrous pericardium and parietal layer of the serous pericardium are supplied by phrenic nerve. So heart wall. Heart wall is made up of, or it starts from, heart wall starts from visceral layer of the pericardium. So visceral layer means epicardium. Okay, visceral pericardium నుంచి మనకి heart wall అనేది start అవుతుంది. Epicardium means this is the visceral layer, then myocardium, endocardium. In between this we have fibrous skeleton. Okay, between myocardium and endocardium we have the fibrous skeleton. So the fibrous skeleton of the heart will have crisscrossing interlacing layer of the connective tissue. So fibrous skeleton of the heart, it will be like crisscross. Okay, so crisscrossing interlacing layer of the connective tissue. Okay, heart wall is made up of the layers which are found in the heart wall are epicardium, myocardium, fibrous skeleton and endocardium. So heart wall, visceral, pericardium, myocardium, endocardium and fibrous skeleton. So this is the heart wall. Epicardium, visceral layer is epicardium, myocardium, endocardium. Okay, so here we have between myocardium and endocardium, so crisscross tissue, that is called fibrous skeleton. Fibrous skeleton. Okay, so this epicardium is made up of simple squamous epithelium, loose connective tissue and fat. You can see simple squamous epithelium. So simple squamous epithelium means single layer. Simple squamous means flat shaped cells, single layer epithelium which will have the basement membrane. Simple squamous epithelium means basement membrane and flat cells. Okay, so this is made up of simple squamous epithelium. So the surfaces of the heart. So coming to the surfaces of the heart, it can be anterior, it can be posterior and inferior. So anterior part is like sternocostal area. Anterior region can be called as sternocostal surface. Okay, surfaces of the heart, anterior view will be like sternocostal region. Okay, it comprises of right atrium and atrioventricular groove, right ventricle. Okay, and the auricle of the left atrium. Anterior surface of the heart will comprising by right atrium, right ventricle. Okay, so right atrium, atrioventricular groove and left ventricle, small strip of the left ventricle and auricle of the left atrium. In anterior view, if we see the heart, the structures which we may see are like right atrium, right ventricle and small strip of left ventricle and the auricle of the left atrium we can find. Next, posterior view. In posterior view, we can see it is comprised by base. Posterior view is comprised by base. Mainly, it will have left atrium and receiving the 4 pulmonary veins. Okay, posterior view can be left atrium and pulmonary veins. Posterior view of the heart, we can find left atrium and pulmonary veins. Inferior or diaphragmatic area. Inferior region we can find right atrium, atrioventricular groove and both ventricles separated by interventricular groove. Okay, interventricular groove means which are separated. The ventricles are separated by the interventricular